As a kid, I remember getting my first AM transistor radio. It was small, it was battery powered. It was freedom to listen to my music, not that of my parents. It was my access to news and information, music and entertainment. The options seemed limitless. My euphoria was akin to kids today getting their first iPhone. My kids felt that way when they got their first iPod. I remember the radio. It was power. The DJs were spinning tunes. Paul Harvey with his daily updates. Life was centered there. It was what destroyed the boredom on road trips. AM radio has been a big part of my life, and I was shocked to learn that there's a push by carmakers to take AM radio out of cars. This isn't because there's better technology. AM radio still has plenty of amazing capabilities and great usefulness, and it's not about cost. Sure, there are complaints that AM radio interferes with modern batteries, but that can be solved with a minor part costing $25 or $30 in a $50,000 car. What's about is control. And it's about your liberty, security, and values. AM radio is how I learned conservatism from Rush Limbaugh. It's how I hear from Glenn Beck today. AM radio is about you being able to tune the station of your choice without data charges or streaming. You can be very far away from a cell tower and still get an AM signal. And the AM signal penetrates weather and even bunkers. The national security implications became clear when Israel was forced to reactivate AM radio during their recent war in order to reach citizens. If you use a weather radio, you're using the AM band for alerts and information. Relying on cable, satellite, or cell towers in a storm can be risky at best. Mike Carter and I recently interviewed Troy Miller of NRB for our Pirate Money radio program. As I thought it through, I realized this is an important economic warfare issue. And for expediency, I want to roll for you some clips of Troy as he explains the need for AM radio. So, Troy, why is AM radio in danger?
Well, look, first of all, AM radio is extremely important to folks in the rural areas of America. Like you said, there's a lot of listeners out there. There's well over 40 million people that still listen and depend on AM radio daily. So the car manufacturers have decided that maybe in their eyes that AM radio is older, outdated technology. And in the last administration with the electric vehicle push, they came up with this idea AM radio has too much interference with the battery and the battery interferes with AM radio. So we just need to get rid of it. It's outdated technology. That really was debunked, Kevin and Mike, pretty quick because the government accounting office came out and said, look, you're talking about anywhere from a $9 part to a $35 part to take care of that interference. So we started to look into this, and there's a lot more going on behind the scenes to get AM radio out of the dash.
Well, we need to just describe the whole AM and why it is important to America.
This idea about the connected dashboard. And I think earlier talking about, you get into a car today, it's got this big 9-10 inch screen. Some of them have a 12-inch screen in them. Everything runs through that now. Your buttons are all gone. It's all running through that. You run your AC and everything. Well, one of the things they want to run through that is the information you can get to. And so car manufacturers have figured out, I had a friend that recently bought a brand new, Chevy Suburban, and you have to sign up for a subscription in order to get their navigation system to work. And so there's a lot of money that the car manufacturers can make through these subscriptions, and then they become the gatekeepers of the information inside the car. But look, in rural America, and across America, this is very important. Right now, the emergency broadcast system that gives us all our information in times of natural disasters or other national emergencies that are going on, AM radio is the primary platform that's communicated through. The AM signal is better fitted to be able to power through storms. We just had a massive set of storms go through Tennessee here last night, and satellite TVs down, cable systems were offline, cellular system was spotty, but the weather radio setting in my bedroom there was spot on, telling me where the storms were, what was going on, the alerts were there. And so this is very important for people from an emergency broadcast standpoint. And living in Florida, any of you guys, Florida and Texas, when hurricanes come through, you depend on AM radio to tell you when to hit shelter, and then after it's all over, where to find the help you need to find.
And so, Troy, they're telling us they got to pull these out of our cars? Tell us why.
Yeah, and look, again, it's not about, this $9 part or so that has to go in there. It's really about controlling that dashboard. And look, also, I'm going to say behind this, on AM radio, the top programming is conservative talk. That's number one. Christian talk and teach is number two. And Spanish language is number three, followed by sports. So if you look at that and you say, look, AM radio would silence a lot of conservative talk and a lot of Christian talk and teach that people tune into every day. And so, look, I'm not going beyond to say that the gatekeepers out there would love to see AM radio shut down. And I think if you lose AM radio, FM radio is not going to be far behind because they want to control all the flow of information.
Well, can you still stream it out of an app or something?
But again, the streaming side of it all depends on your cell towers being up and in coverage. And when you get out to rural Nebraska, when you get out into Idaho, when you get out to a lot of states across this country, you don't have an FM signal and you don't have that cell phone coverage, but you do have AM radio that's reaching you out there. We used to have one, I'm old, so we had one that was actually, I baling wired it to the tractor. So when I was out raking hay, you could listen to the radio and look, that rural America depends on this. And a lot of Christians depend on this. And I'll tell you one area that also, I was recently at a conference, and a lot of Spanish pastors today are looking to reach the Spanish audience. And the largest Spanish audience out there is on AM radio. And so these pastors are looking for a good, cost-effective way to reach that. And of course, we know that the Spanish has moved more conservative, Spanish language has. So there's another reason that you would say these gatekeepers would love to see AM radio go away. There's really a push in this country to control the information right now. We see it in the major tech companies. We see it in the media. And of course, the last administration, we saw it with government collusion with all of them.
Yeah, any last comments?
AM radio right now, the AM and Every Dash bill is moving through both the House and the Senate. And so it has a lot of support. We picked up 14 more co-sponsors just this week. So we're over 140 co-sponsors. So just ask the audience out there, hey, call your congressman, call your senator and tell them you support AM radio in every car.
All right, we need to take a break. When we come back, we'll hear more from Troy Miller on the important role of AM radio and what we need to do to keep it. We'll be right back. In uncertain times, finding stability in the economy can feel challenging. But what if you could navigate economic volatility while honoring your biblical values? At Timothy Plan, they believe this balance is possible. Timothy Plan filters its volatility-weighted ETFs and family of mutual funds through a biblical pro-life and pro-family lens, so you can see competitive returns and moral responsibility, helping you to weather the economic storms. With Timothy Plan, align your investments with your values while adapting to our ever-changing culture. Since 1994, Timothy Plan has been recognized leader in biblically responsible investing. Timothy Plan, your bridge between faith, finances, and the future. Visit timothyplan.com or call 1-800-TIM-PLAN or 1-800-846-7526. Investing includes risk, including possible loss of principal. Before investing, carefully consider a fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses contained in the prospectus available at timothyplan.com.
Somewhere a perversion has taken place. Our natural, unalienable rights are now considered to be a dispensation of government, and freedom has never been so fragile, so close to slipping from our grasp as it is at this moment.
Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. It has to be fought for and defended by each generation.
You and I have a rendezvous with destiny. We'll preserve for our children this, the last best hope of man on earth, or we'll sentence them to take the last step into 1,000 years of darkness.
In this most critical time in our nation's history, now more than ever, Americans need to align with companies that support our constitutional rights and God-given freedoms. Patriot Mobile supports your values and provides exceptional 100% U.S.-based customer service. Join the movement today. Go to patriotmobile.com or call 972-PATRIOT.
Here's the issue. Carmakers want to remove AM radio from your car, and in doing so, remove a powerful voice that reaches all of America. Well, without the ability to hear live radio in your car, AM stations would wither and rural America would lose access to news, entertainment, information, and emergency broadcasts. This is not the same as changing out an 8-track player for a cassette tape, or replacing the cassette player with a CD player, or taking out CDs for CarPlay. In each of those examples, the consumer retained choice of what they were hearing, even if it was played differently through different technology. But removing radios from cars is a whole other thing. Sure, if you pay monthly, you get satellite radio, but it's not local and it's not cheap. And if the weather goes bad, you might not receive a signal at all. Or if you're inside a building, sure, you have Wi-Fi, but that can go out and also cost you money. Same for cell coverage. But an AM radio will always give you a signal as long as you have batteries. And you don't have to charge an AM radio every night like your cell phone. It uses very little power. So why would car companies want to remove radios? 2 words, money and control. I recently interviewed Troy Miller, the CEO of National Religious Broadcasters, NRB, about the importance of AM radio.
Yeah, so the National Religious Broadcasters Association came to be back in 1944 when radio was the new mass media medium to communicate to people. Pastors right away, early pastors have always been innovators. They saw radio as a way to get out the gospel, to reach people with the gospel, and to help the church be discipled. So they went to go on radio, and a couple things happened. First of all, the radio gatekeepers wanted to narrow their ability. They wanted to say, you can only have this much time and you can't talk about this, you can't talk about that. And then there was another group that said, well, hold on, we also want to control which pastors get on radio and which ones do not get on radio. So this group met at Moody Church in Chicago. They formed the NRB, and they have been fighting. We have been fighting ever since for the rights for Christian communicators in whatever form they are today, radio, television, digital, filmmakers, publishers, authors, you name it, whatever it is today, we advocate and fight for the rights for those communicators to be in the public sector and to be in the public space. That's one of the primary top things we do at NRB. The second major role for NRB, and that's really excellence in ministry and excellence in communications in particular. So the convention this year brought nearly 6,000 people together. We had over 270 exhibitors on the exhibit floor. We had over 100, I think it was 114 speakers this year that came in. And as you said, you named some of them, Jack Hibbs was in our opening session. He really set the tone for there. And then we love to put these panels together to bring industry experts in to talk about everything from what's going on in the culture to what's going on in technology. We had 3 day and a half and 3 full half-day sessions on just artificial intelligence and talk about artificial intelligence. So NRB's convention is really the place to go. As you said, it's the convening of everybody who works in this industry, so you can really network and connect with folks to expand the ministry God's called you to, as well as find out where technology's headed. Where's this industry headed? Where's radio? What's the next rounds of radio? What's the next round in video distribution? Where's streaming going? How do we get into podcasting? How does podcasting get into radio? That was a huge session this year where, for everybody who thinks radio's dead, a huge session on podcasters wanting to know how to get into radio and television was out there. And so that's the kind of people, that's the kind of expertise we bring together at these national events. I think that the future, first of all, we live in the most amazing time in human history because we have never been able to communicate instantly around the globe to almost anyone. So with the phones in our pocket, you can get on WhatsApp, you can get on Signal, you can get on all these kinds of apps out there. Without having to make a long-distance phone call, and you can be talking to a person around the world. You could be talking to multiple people, plus this whole transition into this kind of social communications environment. I read a recent article that said the average social media user, whether you're on Facebook, whether you're on Instagram, whether you're on X now, any of these platforms, you have the ability to influence over 400 people. So over 400 people. The average church in America is about 120. So you're influencing almost 3 to 4 times the size of the average church. And so it's just a fantastic time for us as Christians to be able to bring the gospel to the public square and around the world. And you never know who's listening or who might be watching your post. And all of a sudden you impacted somebody's life. Maybe they were thinking about having an abortion. Maybe they were depressed. Maybe they were suicidal out there. And they saw your post. They saw your life, your testimony, and that changed their life. So as Christian communicators, this is just a fantastic time to live in. Plus the tools to do this are, so inexpensive compared to what it would have cost you 20, 30, or 40 years ago to get into this kind of communication. The tools are they're out there, they're readily available. You can do this for just as low as a few $100s, or you can be semi-professional for a few $1,000s. And so there's so much excitement out there. And then, of course, AI. AI, I think, is going to really, any tool we've ever created could be used for good and evil. But for us, the ability to use AI to enhance our communication and our communication abilities out there. Every ministry should be looking at this. We got left behind on the whole social media side because we were worried about the dangers of it. Well, let's go and claim it all for the kingdom and the glory of God.
That's the kind of thing that you're going to get when you go to NRB. They have these big conventions every year, and I go to a lot of conventions. I go to CPAC and AmFest and Freedom Fest and a lot of conventions. But one of the most exciting is National Religious Broadcasters. They meet every year, generally in February. They meet at one of the Gaylord hotels. It's huge, and you meet amazing people. Like I was walking down the aisle and I saw, there's Nick Vujicic, or there's Michelle Bachmann, or there's Dave Bratt from Liberty, or Ryan Helfenbein. It is an amazing group of people that gather together to defend the first of our First Amendment rights, which is the freedom of religion. And all the other rights kind of center on that one, because if you can't speak out and worship God, you really can't speak out on anything else. All right, we're going to need to take a break. But when we come back, we're going to have more from Troy Miller. He is the CEO of National Religious Broadcasters, NRB, and we're going to learn the importance of NRB and how we can support their important work. What they're doing is making it possible for you to believe in God, worship God, and get good quality programming on radio, podcast, television, everything else. We'll be right back to cover more after this break. Here's a $10 bill. It's got the picture of Alexander Hamilton on the front of it. It's kind of sad. When I was 10 years old, everything that I could buy for $1 now costs about $10. That's the cost of inflation. It's just paper. It's not backed by anything. You can't exchange it for gold and silver. You used to, but you can't do that anymore. And that's unfortunate. Pirates wouldn't accept this. Pirates, they wanted gold and silver. Patriots, the founders of this nation, also wanted gold and silver coin. In fact, they put a provision in the Constitution, 17 words, that said states could only make gold and silver coins tender within the states. That's why I wrote this new book, Pirate Money, Discovering the Founders' Hidden Plan for Economic Justice and Defeating the Great Reset. It will explain exactly the history of money and exactly why gold and silver coins can be made modern with new technology and a useful monetary system. PirateMoneyBook.com.
I'm Kevin Sorbo. When you spend money, you consider who you're buying from and the causes they support. If you don't, then you're likely supporting companies that are trying to destroy our country and take away our freedoms. Patriot Mobile is America's only Christian conservative wireless provider. They're a cell phone company and a good one. They offer nationwide coverage on the best 4G and 5G networks along with 100% US-based customer support. But here's the deal. Patriot Mobile's mission has nothing to do with cell phones. They carry out their mission by giving back millions of dollars every year to Christian conservative causes that are actively engaged in the fight to save America. Voting is no longer enough to beat the woke. We have to band together, support like-minded companies, and vote with our dollars. That's how we win. Stop supporting companies that want to destroy America and join Patriot Mobile today by visiting patriotmobile.com or call 972-PATRIOT.
Have you ever tuned into religious broadcasting? It's changed a lot over the years. Now it's much more than preachers with ill-fitting suits begging for money. It's a movement where many people get news and worldview. This is the modern NRB, National Religious Broadcasters. I recently interviewed NRB CEO Troy Miller. Troy's a really smart guy, and he makes some great points. We have to protect religious liberty to have the America that we want. Let's listen to Troy Miller as he explains the role of the NRB.
Well, first of all, I think we have in the short term, at least, we have a very bright future right now because we have a very friendly government. We've been operating under this very heavy-handed, weaponized government, as we all know, was really bent against Christians and Christianity from every aspect of the government, every department of the government. There was something going on that was really targeted at Christians. So we have to take opportunity of that. Right now, just beyond what we're doing for AM radio, there's a number of other bills that are going through both the federal side of Congress and several state bills that we're tracking and working on. Another thing we're working on, Kevin, I don't know if you guys know about the Johnson Amendment, which is an amendment that Senator Johnson there out of Texas back in the 1950s slipped into a House reconciliation, and it silenced the pastors and the pulpits across this country. For 170 plus years, pulpits spoke out about candidates that were running for offices. They gave their opinions. We're taking the IRS to court right now over that. We think that's both a violation of freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and it's been unequally applied since it came into place. Every one of the last 5 Democratic nominees have spoken in liberal progressive churches and not even received so much as a letter from the IRS. Yet we have multiple churches who simply told their people about the major issues or prayed for candidates and immediately received letters from the IRS saying cease or desist, or we're going to pull your tax exempt status and pull your status. So we're taking the IRS to court. We think we have a great case. We think we're going to that's going to move forward. We're taking the FCC to court on some DEI stuff they're forcing on stations, and we're also taking to court the whole side of royalties. You know, there was a recent hearing on NPR and PBS, and there's so many special carve-outs for them that limit Christian broadcasters and communicators. For example, people like American Family Radio, they pay 18% higher royalty rates on music and other things than NPR does, simply because Congress gave NPR. So we're working all of those issues, plus all the issues that are going on in the boardrooms across this country, and the C-suites and the mainstream media. So look, there's no shortage of work for NRB to do. So you can keep track of all that work at nrb.org that's going on. And you really should be up to speed on that, because there are some very small things that can go through that can even affect how your church communicates through the internet, or even how it communicates internally, because a lot of people don't know the FCC controls licenses even on systems inside the church, microphones and wireless transmissions and all of those things. So there's a lot of work for us to be doing out there, Kevin.
Wow. When I think of NRB, I think of the networking and what you're going to do to get the message out. But I think what you just highlighted and heard from Troy was that they're doing so much behind the scenes legislatively to make certain that we have free speech, to make certain that we have religious liberty. These are important things NRB is doing.
Yeah, and again, there's a lot going on behind the scenes. But Kevin, you guys asked too, the future and the optimistic. Look, I look at the next generation. Of course, we saw some numbers recently. Bible sales have gone up in America, people looking at that. The number of searches for people that are searching for, tell me about Jesus Christ, tell me about Christianity, tell me about what Christianity is all about. Those have surged as well, because people are finding out that the world is empty, and it's giving them empty promises. And as a lot of these millennials and Gen Zers are getting older, they're finding out that the world has really lied and manipulated them. And it's no lost that mainstream media and mainstream entertainment has a lower confidence rate than pulpits do across this country. So people are looking for that, and they want answers. And look, we have the answers. The church has the answers. The scripture is the only place that has these answers. So I think we're just living in this wonderful, great opportunity time for us if we have the courage to do it, to get out there and to share the gospel and to change people's lives. And we know all the things that government's doing is great. I'm happy with this administration. I love all the places they're going. But if the foundation underneath all that, the Christian foundation, isn't solidified, isn't solid, if it keeps eroding, then none of that's going to matter. None of that will matter, because we'll have a country that doesn't understand the principles and the foundations of both law, morality, ethics, and civility. All of those will go away, and the people will be so easily manipulated, and the government will become the only place they can look at for leadership and authority. That's the problem we have right now. That's the problem we have to address as Christian communicators, the foundation behind it all.
You know, I've got a chart here of the power of Christian media. It shows that 67% of weekly churchgoers consume some form of Christian media regularly. This is building that community. There's 141 million Americans watching or listening to Christian broadcasting every month, and 4,000 plus combined number of active Christian radio and television stations in the United States. And what this tells me is that what Troy Miller has been doing and the NRB has been doing for the last 80 years is having a positive impact. Christian media was being squashed, canceled, got shut down, silenced, removed, and NRB stood up for Christian media. As a result, we're seeing communities flourishing. We offer community as a part of the gospel of Jesus. It's an amazing thing what Troy Miller's done here and what NRB has done here, and it's something you ought to be checking out. So I urge you to go to visit NRB on the website, and here, let's just say thank you to Troy Miller.
Well, and thank you guys, because it's programs like you that make our work so fulfilling, knowing that you guys are out there getting the truth to people and you're changing people's lives. And we're here to make sure you can keep doing that.
All right, we're going to summarize all this in our free economic battle plan at economicwarroom.com, including links to where you can find out about NRB and support it. Remember, what we see as a marketplace, our enemies view as a battle space. And the airwaves, that's a battle space. This is Kevin Freeman from the Economic War Room.